Welcome to Bunce's Boxing Podcast on ESPN.co.uk. We are out every single week, and we have been since January of 2013. News, the rumours, the reports, the previews, the fantasy fights, the winners, the losers. Me, well, I deliver it all. On this show, Frank Buglioni talks about moving up and moving on. Good pro, old school fighter is Frank. And Anthony Fowler, Great Britain's, that's GB's #1 amateur, talks Olympic dreams and, well, Olympic dreams in the Olympic year. And Adrian Granados, is he the best fighter you have never heard of? He joins me from Chicago, and you can make your mind up. There will be a competition. There will be a lot of your tweets, that is. So relax, because it's here. Sit back and enjoy it. This is the #1 boxing podcast. And I'm joined as ever, as I have been since January 2013, when we launched this, the #1 boxing podcast that there is. I'm joined, of course, by former WBO super featherweight champion of the world, Barry Jones. Barry, not a lot of fights last week, and none worth talking about. And I mean it, we can't talk about every fight
the only one
that takes place.
Carolus beat Fritzenberg for the WBA super middleweight title, so he reverses, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. But this weekend is interesting because we got David Hay on Dave TV versus
Dave on Dave.
Dave on Dave.
Dave on Dave. Can you do the whole thing in that voice?
Dave on Dave versus mate. Versus Mark Demori.
Demori is going to come and have a fight. You know he is.
Yeah, he is. But you got to think that he's been picked. You know, yeah. they've been well picked. So it might be a cut around blowout, which would be good for David because he's picked the perfect time to come back. Obviously with Fury winnable title.
Oh boy!
But also in the same night over in the Barclays Centre is Deontay Wilder is defends his WBC heavyweight championship of the world against Artur Szpilka, which is
from Poland.
Yeah, he's only lost one. And to Brian Jennings, but if Brian Jennings can stop him, you think Wilder probably will as well. I think Szpilka is quite and Eddie and right in front of you. Perfect. But also on the night, it's a vacant IBF title which was stripped of or given away by Tyson Fury, and that's Charles Martin, who's unbeaten in 23 with 1 draw, 20 knockouts versus Vyacheslav Glasgow.
Vyacheslav Glasgow.
That's what I was trying. That's what I was trying to say. Who's again unbeaten in 22 with 1 draw, and that was against Malik Scott. So it's an evenly matched fight.
It's a good fight. Good heavyweight fight.
I don't know whether it's world class compared to the others, but anyway, but that's the bill over there, and that's pretty much all that's going on this weekend. I've got to be honest.
And that, of course, I think that happened before with 2 heavyweights fought on the same night. World titles on the same night was Mike Tyson fighting in Las Vegas, and the other heavyweight title fight that night was quite important. It was when Tony Tucker basically broke Buster Douglas's heart. Yeah. So you can understand why all those years later, I think 3 years later, why Tyson had no fear of Douglas. Yeah. Because by that time he'd beaten Tucker. Yeah. And he's thinking back when he needs to be reminded of who he's, if you're fighting Douglas, and if he had a puzzled look on his face for 1 second, someone would say, well, don't you remember the guy that quit and ran out of heart against Tucker that night when you beat, I forget who he beat that night, he stopped someone. But that was so I think it's only the second time it's happened. Okay. So it's quite, listen, we can do two things.
But the problem is, though, that there's so many, because I'm just, my first item of the news mentions another.
Lucas Brown and Shaggy or something.
No, mentions another world title fight. Ortiz.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. You can do 2 things, Barry. You can take the high ground. You can stand on a soapbox and you can say, I'm only going to talk about the linear champion. Yeah. In which case, you can't talk about any champions because there isn't such a thing anymore. In mid 70s, late 80s, you had half a shout. So mid 70s, early 80s, you had half a shout. Yeah. Or you can take what I call the sensible ground. We're not saying that Vyacheslav Glasgow against Lawrence is the greatest fight ever for the heavyweight title.
Against Martin, sorry.
Sorry.
I see you've got that Martin Lawrence.
I've been doing it all the time as well with him. I did it a couple of times on the other show. So we're not saying it's the best fight out there by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a competitive fight between 2 unbeaten heavyweights. It's a
really evenly matched fight, which is what you want.
Which is more than you want, because how many stinking fights have we had? in the heavyweight division. Absolute stinkers. Anyway, Barry, move on. Barry Jones is in fine form today.
The WBA have ordered Luis Ortiz to defend his WBA interim title against Alexander Ustinov, which would be...
and we do love Ortiz, don't we?
Yeah, he's great. King Kong, is that his name? King Kong?
King Kong. And he smiles. He fights like America.
Ring Magazine have given their yearly awards, and Joe Gallagher has won Trainer of the Year, and Tyson Fury has won Fight of the Year, so that's brilliant news. Kell Brook has confirmed, like we mentioned last week on the show, that Kevin Bizier will be his next defence. They're talking late March, I think, possibly early April.
All right.
Mike Tyson, he said that Fury is the best heavyweight champ since him.
Yeah, I know. Hey, listen.
Who knows? I think he might be the most engaging, and people want to watch maybe because of the antics outside the ring. But that's what praise that is from Mike Tyson.
Absolutely.
Keith Thurman, this is a good fight. Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter.
Yeah, good.
They've agreed it for some time in March. That's a smashing fight.
Yeah, it's been brewing. They've been talking. I'm delighted with that one.
And also, the winner of Quigg and Frampton has been ordered by the WBA to face Rigondeaux.
Barry, your stand-up routine is brilliant.
No, but hang on. But the IBF have ordered the winner also to face their number one challenger, which is Shango Wake. So you can imagine whoever wins that fight relinquishes the WBA title, keeps the IBF, because you don't want to be boxing Rigondeaux, that's for sure.
It's a great thing from Rigondeaux last week, because he gets accused of being unsmiling, which he is. And he also gets accused of being a bit of a machine, which he isn't. He's not unfeeling. He posted a picture on Twitter, and it's of him with his partner or wife and their baby. I think he had to leave a child behind in Cuba when he escaped the second time, when he defected the second time. And what he basically said was, all I want to do is be able to earn enough money to feed my family. And then there was a picture. And you forget that, because he was stripped of his titles because of a variety of reasons, and Carl Frampton and Scott Quigg benefited enormously. They wouldn't have been sanctioned, as we know.
But this is not the first time.
No, it's not the first time. It's not the first time. But too many people tend to paint Rigondeaux as some kind of machine. Unfeeling. He's a human as well. He's got to pay a mortgage. He's got kids to support. So when he loses a lot of income, like he's done, out of the blue, short notice, losing his titles. I thought he took it well, and plus his comments after that last fight, when he talked about Scott Quigg and Frampton, were fantastic. He said, "Listen, great, hope they make lots of money.
Yes,
I just hope they don't run from me." Carry on, Barry. That was a bit of preaching there. Nothing wrong with a bit of
Frank
preaching.
Warren has confirmed that an offer has been received for Liam Smith, who's the newly crowned WBO middleweight champion of the world, to fight Canelo Alvarez. So listen, I don't give Liam Smith a much chance at all, to be honest. But if he can fight maybe a future Hall of Famer and earn plenty of money doing it, would anyone turn that down, Steve?
Who did we speak to last week? Billy Joe Saunders, talking about Golovkin. Said the same thing.
Listen, these kids are super confident. They think they can beat anyone.
And if the money's right.
So that Danny Garcia Roberto Guerrero fight, which is on, has now been sanctioned for the vacant WBC welterweight title, which is vacated obviously when Floyd Mayweather retired. Also, the other WBC title he held, which is like middleweight title, is going to be contested against Jamel Charlo, who's obviously Jamel, which is Jermel, the younger brother, by about a minute, is the WBA light middleweight champion.
I think he is, bro.
And he so Jamel is going to box John Jackson, who lost to Andy Lee for the WBC light middleweight title. So poor Amir Khan though has been bypassed yet again.
But Amir Khan has been told he fights the winner.
He fights the winner,
of Garcia.
He do, but also Berto and somebody else
have been told the same. Aren't they in a semi-final?
They're going to be some semi-final, so they're on the line for this.
Really
it seems to be really ugly, and you feel sorry for all of them.
And by the way, we broke the news that would be for one of those titles a couple of weeks ago when I said that we thought it was going to be for the promoters had applied for Garcia and Guerrero to be for the middleweight world title. And we hinted that it might be for one of the others, and it was. Carry on, Bal. Also, I'll run you on the data.
London boxer Michael Grant, who hadn't boxed for over a year, was stabbed last week, but he's out the hospital now, which is obviously always a great sign after being stabbed. On the show. Hope he makes a full recovery. A good fighter, Michael Grant, who didn't really get promoted properly.
No, he had hard fights.
Beat young Billy.
I know the kid you mean.
Yeah,
the kid from West Ham. But he lost in the ABA final, Grant, to Jamie Cox. Really good ABA final all those years ago when Amir Khan pulled out.
Oh, that would have been Commonwealth year as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, good year it was, mate. And then Jamie Cox went off and won the Commonwealths, but he won it under his other name, which is Hassan. Like his name was like Dennis Hassan or something.
Billy Morgan, he beat.
Billy Morgan.
Undefeated Billy Morgan, didn't he?
Well done. We had them both on the show, didn't we? We're going to rematch.
And also, really good news, the WSB have announced, WSB Great Britain team, which is the Lionhearts, they've announced their team 30 strong.
We're going to speak to Anthony Fowler in a moment.
It's 38 strong, sorry, so it's 30 GB boxers, 8 overseas boxers, and the first match is in the USA, against the USA in the York Hall. That's the first home match on the 18th of February. Yep. There's 4 boxers in every category.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Well,
I got a list of all the fight. I don't name every single one of them.
I've got it sent to me. But what it is, Bill, if you forward that to me, it'd be much appreciated. But the interesting thing is, and I know Anthony Fowler will tell us this later on, but to box in this year's qualifiers, WSB qualifiers, even if you boxed last year, you must box at least once this year.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We'll talk to Anthony Fowler about that a bit later on. Anything else from me, Barry?
No, I'm done.
You're done?
I'm done.
It's unbelievable.
I'm done. Oh, that's all the news. If there's any more news you got, it's not news.
Oh, that's tough fight until Dillian White's done an interview saying he's going to come back, obviously, which is what he told us a few days after the fight.
That's not news.
And that he thinks that Anthony Joshua is slow. Hey ho, we like Dillian White.
I gotta say, I never understand when boxers before a fight when they put down the boxer they're fighting, why put him down? Because why say he's not very good when you're fighting him, and then when you get beat by somebody and then say he's a bit slow. But that you just got beat by a slow fighter. Why would you say that? I like Dillian White. You're a lovely guy, but why would you say that?
When was who then? Who was the victim of the greatest case of that? That I still think he's maybe not recovered from even now. I'll tell you who.
Go on.
His opponent had no chin, had no heart, couldn't make the weight, was a playboy, couldn't take a punch.
David Hay.
Yep, Enzo Mack and all the people around him. Do you remember?
Yeah.
All the people around him told Enzo, this guy's a bum, he's a coward, he's got no heart, he can't make the weight, he's got no chin. I've said this.
Yeah.
And Enzo hasn't denied it. I still think that weighs on Enzo's mind.
See, people get confused with being able to be put down and being able to be knocked out.
Absolutely.
Hayes one of those guys who can be put down, but not so easily knocked out.
And in all fairness, I know Hay fights at the weekend. We mentioned, talked about it there, but too many people look at David Hay and hear him and think about that nice guy, and they forget that he's really nasty when it comes to fighting, and he's brave.
At the moment, seeing all the interviews at the moment, he looks like a homeless person.
He does, doesn't he?
He really does, yeah.
That look,
I'm rooting for him to win.
Get him! Barry loves the homeless. You're with me, Steve Bunton, and Barry Jones. It is Bunton's Boxing Podcast on ESPN.co.uk. To get in touch with us is really simple via Twitter at ESPN UK Boxing. Use the hashtag AskBunsy. Stick with us because the guests are lined up. We're going to start this week with a guy who lost the world title fight at the end of last year. And he's not one of those guys who brags and boasts about he's going to go out on his shield and if he loses, he'll go out in an ambulance. He doesn't do that. He just gets on with it. And it was a savage fight, I've got to tell you. And I'm going to say it now, and I said it on the night. There was a couple of occasions when perhaps he could have been rescued from his own bravery. He didn't. He pushed on. He went in the full 12 rounds. He lost on points. He's now going to move up in weight. It is, of course, Frank Buglioni. Welcome to the show, Frank. I've got to ask you this straight away about moving up to light heavy from super middle. Was it a hard decision?
No, it's been in the back of my mind for a while, to be honest, Steve. The main thing was I stayed at super middleweight because the opportunities came up. I was coming down from 14 stone to super middle, which is quite a big. And the only way I could do that was through really, really strict, clean living and training extremely hard. So when I move up to light heavyweight, it's not like I've got to put muscle on or do anything differently. It's the fact that I've got 7 pounds less to lose. And I feel very strong at light heavyweight. All my sparring done with cruisers and light heavies, I've always gotten better. So yeah, I'm really confident. I'm looking forward to it.
Was it hard the last couple of fights then, Frank, getting the last 3 and 4 pounds off?
Well, obviously the Lee Markham fight it took a little bit out of me, but I kind of learnt from my mistakes about making the weight, and that was more an issue with my fighting. It was more about making weight rather and maintaining strength than fighting. Obviously, when the world title opportunity came up, I did everything absolutely to the letter, and I would have gone in there with two broken hands and fought for that world title. It didn't matter to me.
And you did fight that way. You fought like it made no difference what was going to come. You were going to go 12 rounds, irrespective.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Looking back on that fight, Frank, because I haven't spoken to you since then. I've written about it quite a lot because and I just thought it was incredible bravery and guts you show. Were you aware? I mean, I know it sounds an odd question. Were you aware of how hard it was?
It was a tough fight, and I was aware of how hard it was afterwards.
That's what I meant.
If I'm honest, it was. Whilst I was in there, I was just fueled on adrenaline, and I trained so hard for it. I was in a different frame of mind. But it took me a good month to really recover. I think again from the making weight, and the last 6 months fighting at super middleweight was probably a little bit too much of a stretch for me. So that had taken its toll on me, and I had a nice rest, and I'm ready to go again. I'm full of energy.
Traditionally, Frank, if you look back through books and you speak to fighters, I don't mean from 50 years ago and 100 years ago, I mean from 15 and 20 years ago, when guys had really hard 12-round championship fights, it did take them a couple of months to recover. That kind of doesn't happen this often. I'm really pleased you've said that, because it doesn't happen this often. Guys have 12-round fights, they win titles or they lose titles, and 6 weeks later they're looking to get back again. I mean, fighters traditionally, took a couple of months off, or a month off, certainly, to let their bodies recover. I mean, that's the way it was. You speak to Steve Collins, I bet he had about a dozen fights where he needed about 2 months just to let his body recover.
Yeah, well, it's the training camp that takes it out of you, as well as the hard 12 rounds, and that's how you get stronger. It's not that the training is just a stimulus. It's the rest when your body regrows and gets stronger, and that's how training works. And people seem to forget that, and it's the same with fighting. You need to let your body recover, heal, come back stronger, and that's what takes you to the next level. And I've done that this time, and without even trying, I was eating healthy. I always do. I live clean throughout, even when I'm not training, and my weight just kind of skyrocketed, and I grew into light heavy. I've been walking around at cruiserweight, if I'm honest, Steve.
Yeah, of course.
And I knew it was the right decision. It was the right move. And there's some great fights at light heavy, and I'm sure a few super middles will be moving up as well from the domestic scene. Well,
there's a lot of big super middles that can move up, and as you say, there are some fights at light heavy. Do you know what the plan is, Frank, when you might be out or when you are out? Any sort of idea of the route you're taking?
Well, I'll build myself back up in the domestic scene. Dominate domestically, and then take a view from there and move up into the European and the world scene at the end of next year after. Yeah, I mean,
as you say, the Chudinov fight was a fight you had to take. It was, we all knew it was a really hard fight. Now, you can sort of not step back or go back, but just carry on the same path, like that was a diversion rather than a destination. Is that a fair comment? So, if you hadn't taken the Chudinov fight, you'd have been building up to a domestic showdown at 168, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. I think Chudinov's I don't think so much now, but he was an underrated fighter.
Yeah, damn right he was.
I think people realise how good he is now. But there's not many people calling him out.
No, that's the truth. He's the invisible man, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a very good fighter, and I know he hasn't had a lot of fights, but he's had 8 years as a professional, and he started his career in America, so his experience is absolutely massive. And I think he's going to go on to be a very, very good fighter and a champion for a long time.
Yeah, and probably continue to be avoided. Frank, just finally, do you know when you're out next?
I believe there's talks of me fighting on March 12th at the Copper Box.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that show. Good.
Yeah, I'll certainly be ready for that date. I've started my training now. Trained a little bit over Christmas, and I'm well underway. I had my first spar back today. And I'm looking forward to it.
Listen, Frank, it's always a pleasure and a delight to touch base with you. See you in a few weeks' time. Frank Buglioni, thanks for your time.
Steve, thanks very much.
Oh, it's that time in the show when Barry and I get to swap names, get nostalgic, and you get to have your name read out here on Bunce's Boxing Podcast on ESPN.co.uk. I asked you last week for guys, British guys, that have fought for the world title, and you'd forgotten they'd fought for the world title. You'd forgotten all about their world title challenge. They were lost. Now, hundreds of you responded. Some of you got the answers wrong in the sense you said, Harold Graham or something. No one's forgot about Harold Graham's challenge for the world title, but I understand your point. However,
I got to say, I've got to be honest. Some of these guys here might have been forgot from the public because we some of these names mentioned here, they're not. No, people don't talk about much anymore, but we remember because we're in the trade. But no, I sort of understand what some people think.
So do I.
In the general public, people forget like Henry Wharton, which is on the top of the list. But we'll never forget that. But I imagine a lot of people almost do forget.
Boxing Inside UK went for Henry Wharton. Not one, not two, but three world titles. In fact, we talked to Robin Reid last week. You and I.
Yeah, great shape, isn't he?
Yeah, he's in great shape, and he did a better job on Wharton than Ben or Eubank.
Yeah. Really did.
Oh, I'm telling you.
He was unlucky, Henry Ward. I'll tell you what was unlucky. He beat Nardiello.
Yes.
For the European title, about 6 months before Nardiello won the world title, and then lost it to Robin Reid. So literally, just put pause in your career for 8 months, and you're boxing Nardiello for a world title and becoming world champion. And that's how the fine line between winning and losing world titles. So sometimes it's all about timing, and for Henry Wharton, he never quite got the timing right.
John Davison says BDE 18 and Steve Lillis. Steve Lillis also sent that one, and that's an interesting one, of course, because John Davison, remember, never actually won the world title. He just challenged for the world title, if I'm not mistaken. Now, of course, the interesting thing about it is, why did he challenge? It was
a vacant world title. Colin McMillan had lost the world title to...
Oh, no. Barry's under pressure now. Yeah. Oh, no, because he knows I've got the name and Barry can't get the name.
To Palacio, Ruben Palacios, who then failed an HIV test.
Yes.
So that title became vacant. John Davison then was number one challenger for that title. Then Steve Robinson got a phone call of 48 hours notice, travelled up to Teesside, boxed John Davison and beat him in a very close... People forget,
really
good fight, very close fight.
And without a doubt, and I'm going to say this now, John Davison would have beaten Ruben Palacios.
Yep.
And I think he might have beaten Steve Robinson had he been training for 6 weeks for Steve Robinson. Not because Steve Robinson has an awkward style, but because John Davison was crushed.
Yes.
Because for 12 hours... his lifelong dream in his hometown was down the Swanee.
We just said about Henry Ward and things about it's all about timing sometimes, and for Davison obviously things didn't quite work out, and then had a few losses then and packed it in.
Yeah, Nicky Piper, talented in the ring and Mensa member out of it, says Chris Brad 75. Absolutely right. And of course, Nicky Piper had the world title. All he had to do...
the barber shot. Not so much with Ben. He done really well against Ben, but it was going to get beat. Mikulchevsky was just a real payday to say goodbye. But the barber fight, he was winning.
Hometown.
Barber's eye was closed. One eye. And I think the referee gone over to Barber's corner and said, one more round. I was there.
No, then he came to Nicky's corner and told him that there was only one more round.
And then got caught with, I think it was a really cracking left hook.
Unbelievable.
Put him to sleep.
Yeah.
Barber could always... But Barber was very rigid and upright. A bit like Nicky in many ways.
Yes.
But Nicky never gets any credit for how tough he was, because he was well spoken, and he looked like Claire Balding.
Yeah.
Then
oh yes, there's Barry. Now of course, and the other thing we've neglected with Nicky is that, of course, he was that rare thing, a genuine Cardiff fighter that the people of Cardiff love. And we move right on, and the next guy we're going to talk about is Richie Wenton. Richie Wenton. People are like, Richie Wenton. I know that name.
That was the first one. That was when you said about competition last week. I said to you, Richie Wenton definitely. But some people went for that. There was more than just this. This is obviously John Kelly. He put the ass Buncey obviously. But I've seen a few on Twitter mention Richie Wenton, and Richie Wenton was a fabulous fighter. The whole the whole Wenton family were cracking fighters. Yeah, but
I covered them when they won schoolboy titles. That's how old I am.
Coming up against Barrera, and especially in the late 90s, was a horrible, daunting task for anybody.
Now we're going back a little bit here. 60s. Chick Calderwood, light heavyweight. It was one that was on my mind.
You got this. I can't believe you got this. I said, what about Chick Calderwood? And you had everything.
No, I didn't. I had a thought. I thought he'd lost it.
To pastrami.
To Willie Pastrami sandwich, yeah, aka Willie Pastrano, and then he hadn't. Of course, he'd lost it to Jose Torres. Lost his world title fight to Jose Torres, who I think lost it. Who I think beat Pastrano. And then Matthew Hatton. Now this one, Matthew Hatton. Yes, don't worry about Matthew Hatton. BCFC Josh Hussey, NZT Black, and Gooders 84, because everyone forgets one thing about Matthew Hatton.
Well, more than that, it was Sal Alvarez's first world title fight, Absolutely. And he took him the distance. And because Hatton was nothing like Ricky, because he was a boxer, he moved and that jerky little style on his toes. He made it a hard night for. He was never going to win, but he made it a hard night for Alvarez.
And do you remember what else happened in the build up to that fight?
Not so much, Steve.
The fight was taken at welter, and it was switched at about 2 weeks' notice to light middleweight for the title. So Matthew went, yeah, no problem, I'll take it. So when you ever hear people give Matthew Hatton stick, just remind them.
I tell you what, he used to get a lot of stick because he was getting loads of intercontinental fights on the undercard of his brothers.
Absolutely.
But being a brother of such a good fight and a famous fight like Ricky Hatton, that's positive because you're getting paid every time he fights because you get the fight, but also. It's a lot of pressure because you're in his shadow all the time. And to be fair to Matthew, he just went about his business and won a European title in the end and became to be a really good fighter. And I'm going to Steve, a really good fighter.
Don't worry about that. And, 50-odd fights at the end of his career. Pat Cowdell says Bobby C, Miami. Forgotten title challenge, Pat Cowdell, Salvador Sanchez. Of course, Pat Cowdell, also Azuma Nelson. Yeah. Barry, you made a very good point, Barry. You said that some of these fighters here...
Well, this next one now you're going to read.
Some of these fighters here, we do tend to forget that we're inside the business, so we know they fought for a world title, but casual fans or even occasional fans, and I'd like to think that in 3 and a bit years on this show, we've managed to drag people in, encourage people to come in who are not absolute diehards, who are people who turn in because it's entertaining. And informative. Billy Hardy says Matt Plumridge, Jamie Deepin and Rod Cole 7972. Billy Hardy and Orlando Canizales. He fought him twice. People maybe didn't know that. Maybe just thought he fought Nassim Hamid, which of course he did. But he had 2 fights, in massive heat as well.
Well, the Hardy Canizales first fight, as Rod Cole says here, was a fight where I think he was unlucky. Was it the first fight? He was unlucky. The second fight? Yeah, it was one. Yeah, and he's one of those fighters who, another competition, guys who were very unlucky not to maybe walk away with the title. Billy Hardy, good fighter, Billy.
Najib Deo says Mike Tyson 2007. Najib Deo, forgotten world title contender, took Barry Michaels a distance in 1986. Sadly, no longer with us. Billy Schwer says Bernard O'Shea. What about Luton's multiple world title challenger at lightweight? Billy Schwer lost, of course,
Rafael
to
Ruelas
in Atlantic City. Yeah. This is a nice one. Roy Gum says Liam Lawyer. Boxing, long count boxing, at long count boxing. That's a good one because Roy Gums, of course, went out in 1985 and was, I think, involved in the second ever super middleweight world title fight for the IBF title, where he lost to a Korean who at that point had won 35, and I think 33 of them had been quick. So that was a tough Arsenal boy. We talked to him about it. We had him on the show. Do you remember?
Yeah, brilliant.
And it was, it's another world for Terry Marsh says 15 SHR. Forgotten British world titleist. Yep, Terry Marsh. Glenn Catley also falls into that group, says Alan Worrell. And Howard Clark. Mike Hills in Las Vegas and Harry Martin. Howard Clark, eh? Who did he beat? Who did he beat to get the world title fight? He beat someone. He beat a guy with a funny name who he should have lost to. He beat him, therefore he got the world title fight against Vargas at Madison Square Garden. How mad is that?
Francesco Vargas then at that time was a force, wasn't he? I know he turned out to be a little bit predictable because he ate himself out of a career.
Oh, did he ever?
He was vicious. Well, that might have been his nickname actually, vicious. But he was an animal, wasn't he? Vargas really was.
Not only was he an animal, he was quite unpleasant.
And when he boxed, like, was it Trinidad? It was quite an evenly matched fight at the time, wasn't it? I think he was a bit of an animal, but. Howard Clark, people were laughing one day at the time going, how was he getting an opportunity? But he was one of those guys who, again, Howard Clark, one of those guys who was a journeyman, but by necessity.
Yeah, of course.
He was a guy who could fight, but realised very early that he couldn't sell tickets, so he had to be on the B side of people's career. So he had to go out there and sort of like go through the motions just to get paid.
That was it. That's who he beat. He beat a guy called Jason Papillon. Said it was a funny name.
Papillon.
He beat Jason Papillon on points, and then 6 months later, he got stopped in 4 rounds by Fernando Vargas for the world title, the IBF welterweight title. Howard Clark's finishing stats were 127, lost 79, and a couple of draws. Not doing so well now, Howard, suffering some ill effects of long-term bad health. Steve Lillis went to see him. Howard Eastman, of course, not one but two.
Yeah, Hopkins.
Two world title fights. Yeah, well, Hopkins and also, you forget, Joppy.
Yeah, William Joppy.
Yeah, Escaro here says Abraham, but he didn't fight Abraham for the title. It was before
William Joppy. Yeah,
I thought William Joppy.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
He didn't fight Arthur Abraham for the title. He fought Arthur Abraham for like the international something or other. But actually, the William Joppy fight, I thought he'd won.
Good fight at Howard.
He smashed Joppy to bits.
I tell you what, Howard Eastman's probably only fault was he had no gears.
Yeah, that's very true.
He was
Win or lose, he had no gears.
He was a really good boxer, could bang, was strong, hard, awkward, he had everything going for him. But he didn't have the gears sometimes to maybe just up the pace or slow a fighter down a little bit. He just went through the motions of how he used to box, how he used to train, and I think that maybe sometimes held him up a little bit.
There we go. He dropped Joppy in the final seconds of the 12th and final round, 2001. What a fight that was at the Mandalay Bay. It's when he had a row of his cornermen, and he lost on a majority then. And then a few years later, he lost to Bernard Hopkins. Hopkins had to do a job on him because it was a tight enough fight. Yeah. And then he fought Art Abrams for the Intercontinental title. I was right. Well done, Escar. Well done, 4D Love. Paul Lloyd, says Christab 77. Of course, Paul Lloyd went in against Barrera. There's Tony Simpson, 3 times world title challenger, 3 losses, including Hagler, had a great record. We had him on the show. Lovely man. Crawford Ashley. And, of course, one of Crawford Ashley's title fights was against Michael Nunn in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it was a really bizarre one. And Frank Warren was one of the cornermen. Senor Tasty and boxing fan, pound for pound, had that. And Tony Simpson was from KMB Box. Michael Watson, says John Bailey, RAFP_JB. Michael Watson, yes. David Starry, you forget David Starry, had a couple of world title cracks. Yeah. Ralph Charles, I'll never forget his Jose Napoles. That was when Stracy sparred with Napoles for the first time. Tones Tiger, and that was when in theory, Terry Lawless realised that Stracy, who was still a baby, would beat Napoles at some point. Jose Napoles, if he isn't in your top 2 or 3 welterweights of all time, then you need to reevaluate. Harold Bomber Graham, says Jordanair and Adrian Remedy. Little Mickey Cantwell, you boxed a world title fight the same night as Mickey Cantwell.
I did, yeah. He got stopped on cuts.
Is that the Baby Jake night?
Against it was Jamil.
Jamil
or whatever his name was. Yeah, we shared a changing room, me and Mickey, actually. He come back, I'm warming up for my fight, biggest fight of my life, and he came back and they were all crying, distraught.
Nice.
No, he didn't get beat up, he just got cut. So it's so frustrating as that, losing a world title. Yeah. It'd be a no decision now or something, when there's no contest or something.
Bunch of Marmot from South London, I bet they were crying and all. Because when they cry, oh boy. Oh, I bet they were crying and screaming the gaff down, weren't they?
I can't. The
Welsh... All the babies, pit bulls. Probably had a couple of pit bulls in there with them.
We don't cry, Welsh people, because we're so depressed anyway that,
Exactly. What's crying going to do? Anyway, Don Cockle, says David J. Brooks. Now, we've looked at Don Cockle before on this show when he went to see Mocky Marciano. And I'll tell you again, just like I told you with Johnny Owen, don't look at the film. Don't do what Barry did. Come in the next week even more depressed and say, I didn't take your advice. I looked at the Johnny Owen film. Anyway, don't do that. Herbie Hyde. Oh, Herbie had some fights. And that was a Silvana Dafanese. And Matt Skelton, of course. Matt Skelton famously fought Ruslan Shagayev.
Shagayev, yeah. What a crazy that.
And that was...
Didn't do too bad,
actually. Didn't do too bad, but that was the famous night when Frank Maloney, a.k.a. Kelly Maloney, was in the studio with me at Satanta.
Okay, yeah.
So the presenter was Paul. What's his face?
Dempsey.
Paul Dempsey. So Dempo. We had the little intro because there was no problem. There, a nice 40-second intro sets the fight up. Skelton knocking out a few people, Shaggy bashing a few people. Come straight to the studio. My guest today, Steve Bunce, as ever, and joined by the former manager of undisputed heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis. Frank, let me come straight to you. What do you think about this? He said, well, these two. He went, these two. He said they wouldn't get jobs as sparring partners with Lennox. And as for the German crowd, they're rubbish. No word of a lie. In Paul's ear, this is technical speak. We had to go to a break. We went to an ad break after about 2 minutes. And someone came in, Jim Bentley came in to have a pep talk. With Maloney. Say, Frank, try and build it. Yeah, 2 minutes. We were in a break. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Brian London. Says Liam C. David. That's good. That's not bad. Charlie White beat Moran Wolf. Yeah, this is a guy from the first. I looked at that. That's good. Yeah. That's not bad. That's from Zed Shep 91. Brian Kentman. Dave Charnley.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a cracker. He also mentions Johnny
Joe Brown twice.
Joe Brown in Texas as well.
But then didn't he beat Joe Brown then a non-title fight after, which is terrible?
Yeah. Right, Barry, who won? Who won? But then who didn't win?
Okay,
and tell me.
Two people got this. Matt Caulfield, which came second place. Sorry, Matt. You got the hat.
Matt.
Didn't pick up the hat. But the winner was Norman Barton at NC Barton. And it's Leeds Tom Collins.
Oh, what a tough man.
People forget. Tom Collins, British European champion. Lost in 89 first to Jeff Harding in a 2-round war in Australia. Yeah.
It was a savage war. I remember that.
And then lost to... Lienzo Barber in 91 got stopped in 6 rounds there against Barber in Leeds.
Didn't he lose a WBU heavyweight title fight at the end of his career?
To Johnny Nelson. Yeah.
You can't invent it, can you?
But I totally forgot. I remember. I sort of remember Tom Collins boxing, obviously, but I can never remember. I can remember Jeff Harding boxing, though being in some great wars. But I can never remember Tom boxing Jeff.
Let me tell you something. What we've just done there, no one else can do. Have a listen elsewhere if you don't believe me. What we do is fully unique. Now, the winner would have been, but no one got it, and it's in an envelope here. Timmy Driscoll, 1991, in the Italian Lakes, getting stopped in the 9th round for the WBO featherweight title against Maurizio Stecca. No one got it. Really surprised. I thought that would have been a big one. Next week's, if you can. Now, I like the idea of the forgotten fighter. So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to stretch the forgotten a little bit more. I'm going to ask you to tell me who you think is the best fighter we've never heard of. Obviously, we are going to have heard of them. We will know they are. But who do you think is the greatest fighter that just never made it? That maybe we don't know much about. So it could be an amateur, it could be a pro that had 4 or 5 fights. Craig Dermody, the kid from Manchester. Yeah. Was brilliant. Nearly won boxing writers box for the year and vanished. Could
be a world champion down in Japan that
Absolutely.
No one ever talks about.
Exactly, like a Nui would be.
Yeah.
Or like Gonzalez was a year ago. So the best, it's the greatest unknown fighter. Your personal greatest unknown fighter. Okay, I'll help you out a little bit on Twitter as we go along. That was very long, but you know what, Barry? High five as they do in that game you love, that baseball, basketball stuff. After they score a touchdown on a basket, hey! High five! See you in a minute. There are some fantastic light welterweights, or super lightweights as the Americans call them. And if you look through the list of the guys that have got title fights or have had title fights, Fiafei, Broner, Crawford, Lundy, Postel, Matisse, Tryanovsky, Koenica, Ikyang, you won't find my next guest on the list. When you look at his record, if you look at it quickly, it says 4 defeats. But when you look at the 4 defeats, you look, hold on a minute, that was a split, that was a majority, that was a majority, that was a split, and then you think he was meant to lose all of those, and there's a good chance he didn't. He just got stitched up by the judges. Back in November, he went in as the guy that was meant to lose, and I'm being kind, against Amir Iman. Iman was 18-0. He was the favoured fighter, and this man turned it on its head and stopped him in the 8th round. I'm talking, of course, about a guy called Adrian Granados, who's on the line now. Adrian, thanks so much for joining us on the show. It's fair to say, Adrian, that you've been in some hard fights.
Yeah. It hasn't been an easy road for me.
Now, why is that, Adrian? Is it because you genuinely will fight anybody, or is it because you can't get fights?
It was a little bit of both. It was my willingness to take on anybody. I started off really early, like being able to fight anybody. At my 5th fight, I fought Leonardo Tyner, who was I believe it was like 28-3 at the time or something. And obviously for a prospect coming up, that's something you don't do. But I was with a small-time promoter at the time, and it was kind of hard to, get my name up and get recognized. So I kind of just started changing the game a little bit and just started taking on all comers. Now
you talk about that guy Tyner. That was a draw, a split decision draw. And I don't need to ask you, did you think you won? Because I know you're going to tell me you won. and then
yeah, I'll be honest though. It was a competitive fight, but I'm not alone when everybody feels like I won that fight clearly.
And then Frankie Gomez, a couple of fights later, you lose on a majority, but he's unbeaten in 10. Then we fast forward a bit longer, and you fight Kermit Cintron, the veteran, who's only lost a few. He'd won 33. That's a draw majority. Then Felix Diaz, you lose that on a majority. He was 15-0. Then Brad Solomon, I saw that fight. That was on the Mayweather-Pacquiao undercard, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
I was ringside for that, and he completely ran out of steam, and you won that fight. In my opinion, you won that fight. If you had another 2 rounds, you could have stopped him.
Thank you. Yes, I do know that. I actually just finally got a copy of that fight and finally got to see it. And same here. I mean, I knew I won that fight as well.
And then the Amir Imam fight. You were winning on 2 of the 3 scorecards going in to the 8th round, but in your heart, did you know that you were going to win? Was it a fight that you knew you could win from the first bell?
Yeah, no, definitely. I had luckily enough weeks to get ready, and I had a good camp. I was already in decent shape before when they gave me the call. Mm-hmm. So, I came with a lot of confidence, and I think that's what kind of surprised a lot of people there, in the camp, and that were there to just be a part of the show. I kind of walked around with a little, chip on my shoulder and kind of a little swagger. Like you can tell, like I didn't look like any regular opponent. I didn't look like somebody who was there that was just there to be a sacrificial lamb.
Now, have things turned around there? Will you actually now move closer to a title fight now? I mean, you're 26. You might look like you're only about 12, and I mean that as a compliment. But you are 26. Are you getting closer to something now, Adrian? Once again, I'm still, willing to fight anybody, and we're just working on a couple things right now, and whichever one makes us the best decision, then that's where we're gonna go. Now, are these title fights or are they fights against names? Can you give us any clue, or is it secret and negotiations at the moment?
Things are on negotiations right now, so I'm keeping hush. But it's a mixture of that. We've got a couple big names on the table. Also they've thrown out a couple title fight names. So
sure.
We'll see. I'm ready for anybody. I'll fight anybody.
And what's it going to be at 147, 140? Where are you going to be in the next 6 to 12 months?
I'm gonna be staying back at 140. 147. It was just kind of like we said. There were opportunities, and my willingness to take the fights. So that's why I took them. But I still feel good and strong at 140, and I'm gonna stay there.
And of the 140 guys out there, obviously Broner's there. He's fighting Ashley Fearfane. Terence Crawford's fighting Hurricane Hank Lundy. Postal beat Matisse. And a guy called Trojanovsky beat an Argentinian called Kowenka. I mean, I think Crawford's the best. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say Crawford's, probably the lineal champion right now. He's proved himself pretty well so far.
Yeah, he certainly has. Well, listen, do me a favour, Adrian. Stay in touch when you get one of those fights, pushed your way. Let us know. Keep us in the loop. Would you do that for me?
Yes, sir. No problem. That's
Adrian. But by the way, Adrian, before we let you go, are you on Twitter?
Yes, I am.
What are you on Twitter?
El Tigre AG. ELTIGRE
ELTIGRE AG. Brilliant. Mm-hmm. You're a top man, El Tigre AG. Top man, Adrian. Speak to you soon. That time of year again when the best of the British, the Moroccans, the Algerians, the Uzbeks, the Soviets, the Cubans, the Americans, well, you get the idea. Yes, of course, it is the British Lionhearts. Officially announced during the last half an hour or so. I've got Anthony Fowler waiting to talk to me. Now, the first event is going to actually be in Miami on the 21st of January. Anthony's not going to be in that one. He's going to be in the second one, and then there are going to be 3 home fixtures, and it's important. You need to listen to this. I'm not preaching to you. I'm giving you the facts. Thursday, the 18th of February, against Mexico at York Hall. The 3rd of March against the Americans at York Hall, and the 17th of March against the Moroccans at York Hall. There is, and you're going to love this, there's a season pass available. 30 quid for all 3 of them. Now, that is fantastic value. As I say, Anthony Fowler's here. Anthony, as I mentioned there, you're not boxing in Miami. You're going to come straight in at the home fixture at York Hall on February the 18th. Is that correct?
Yeah, we thought that would be the best choice because I'm boxing in Hungary at the start of February, so the other one was a bit too close, and I'm boxing at home in London as well, which is a bonus.
And the first one is, if I'm not mistaken, the Mexican Guerreros on Thursday the 18th at York Hall. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I'm boxing, yeah.
Now, are you, even if you hadn't have been part of the Lionhearts this year, would you have been eligible for the WSB qualification tournament, Olympic qualifier?
No, you need to have one bout
in
this year's competition to be eligible, so that's the main reason I'm fighting in it.
All right. Now, it's been, in fact, the last 2 or 3 years with you, it's been a story of injuries, basically taking care of your ambitions. How are we as we go into 2016?
You know what? Without being on a serious note, I'm actually the best I've been for a long time. I haven't had no injuries for like a good 6 months, and for me that's great. I've got no niggles whatsoever, so hopefully to start with a big year for me.
It's a massive year, isn't it? Because it's hard for all of the, in all fairness, all of the Great Britain boxers, because so far nobody's qualified. 4 Irish have, none of you guys have. Is it something that you guys all talk about when you're up in Sheffield?
And to be honest, last year's competition was very tough to qualify, and it was the Irish were unbelievable to get for. To be fair, fair to them. But I think this year, the first qualify in April, I think a few of us will do that one, and a few of us will qualify in the next one, and there's even one more again. So I'm pretty sure we'll have a strong squad going to Rio. I am so confident.
Now your weight, even though Troy Williamson has done a good job, deputising for you, so to speak, your weight's one of the kind of open and shut ones, and I mean that, no disrespect to any other middleweights, but some of the other weights, there's a lot of competition. That's a good thing, Anthony, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. There's a lot of number 1s and 2s, and the number 2s are hungry and pushes the number 1s, make sure they're all on top of the game, and they're not messing around, they're not skipping training, they're always graphing. So that friendly competition is always healthy, and obviously Troy's number 2, but he still wants my spot, so obviously he's trying to push me as well.
Yeah, and by the way, when he has deputised for you, he's boxed out of his skin as well. So it's not something you can just take for granted. Now,
of course,
at the Olympics in 2012, were you down there at all? Were you sort of on the outskirts of the team, helping with the sparring and stuff? Like I know Sam Maxwell was down there all the time. I just wondered if you were.
Yeah, I was obviously I was sparring a lot with the go and for them leading up to it, but I was a bit frustrated that I wasn't competing myself. I believe that. Obviously, Fred done great, but I thought I was better than Fred at the time. So
sure.
I was more disappointed that I weren't there myself. So I just went to Mexico for trying to switch off away from it, kind of thing, because it was very frustrating being at home.
And watching it, especially as Fred got closer and closer to the silver.
I was still the best. Obviously, there was no hard feelings.
Of course not.
He done what he had to do, but I still believe to this day that I would have done a better job than him, even though he got a silver.
So, in the intervening 3.5 years, has it been hard, especially as there's been some frustrating injury problems? Has it been hard for you?
Yeah, obviously 2013 I had the world. I done great to get a bronze, but obviously I hit my hand. And 2014 was a great year for me. I won the Commonwealth Games, and I won nearly all my fights. And last year was obviously a terrible year, but you always have to go with the bad. And I was hoping last year was probably the worst year of my life. This year could be the best year of my life, so that's how I'm looking at it.
And as we come to the end of this interview, and thanks obviously for your time. I know the squad was only just announced in the last half an hour officially. Since the last Olympics, try and tell me how many international contests you've had.
Oh, that's a tough one, that. But, I'm going to say around 30, 40.
Wow. And you've been in how many? 1 European or 2 Europeans since then? Or 1 world or 2 worlds? Just 1 world?
Just the one, obviously, because of the injuries, which is a bit of a shame because I was hoping to be following Frankie Gavin footsteps and be the second person to win a gold. So that was heartbreaking for me, but that's all about the Olympics.
So you've had at least 30 contests, probably more.
Yeah, I'd say at least 30 at the minimum, 30, 40.
Wow. So, in all fairness, I know it's 4 years later, and I take on board what you're saying about Fred Evans in 2012, but you're a better fighter today than you were then.
Yeah, it could be a blessing in disguise because I obviously would have went to London, I could have medalled, I would have been professional then, and
maybe I wouldn't have been as developed as I am now. Like, I'm a 24-year-old man now, and I'm a lot stronger, and I'm an all-round better fighter. So hopefully when I take to the pros next year, I'll obviously just make towards the finished article of what I can be.
And there's no substitute for hard fights and setbacks and experience, as Luke Campbell found out the other week at the O2.
Oh, yeah.
It's a hard road back.
Yeah, it is. But obviously, Luke will be back, and it was a big surprise for everyone watching, because we all obviously rate Luke so high, but it just shows that professionals, it's a different game. You can't take no one for granted.
You can't. You know what? I don't think you can take anything for granted in the amateurs either. Listen, Andy, it's always a pleasure. I'll see you on the 18th at York Hall.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I'll see you soon, mate.
Well, that's another show over, Barry. Since January 2013, we have been leading the way and dominating. Thanks to Frank Buglioni for coming on and talking about moving up and moving on. Thanks to Anthony Fowler for confirming that he is still starry-eyed talking about those Olympics. And thanks to Adrian Granados. Is he the best fighter that you've never heard of? Oh, what a great show. I love shows like this today. I really do. Anyway, you've been listening to me, Steve Bunce, and him, former WBO Super Featherweight Champion of the world, Barry Jones. Okay, don't say goodbye, Barry. He gets this way. Once we've finished the work, he won't talk again. I'm back next week with him next week. You are, as ever, the greatest fans out there in the entire boxing universe.